Prospect House Media.
And now, prepare yourself for the only weekly podcast you won't want to miss. Welcome to the Ameritocracy Show with Troy Edgar, live from our studios in Los Angeles and Washington, D.C.
Hey everybody, I am Troy Edgar and welcome to the Ameritocracy Show. Thank you for tuning in and checking it out. It is greatly appreciated. This podcast examines the conditions for personal and economic growth and opportunity across America. This week, I went on the road again to Dallas, Texas and met with Robbie Gustin, a music industry insider and musician. Not everyone has the same starting point in life. Robbie talks about overcoming his heartbreaking childhood, addiction, recovery, and how hard work and perseverance has enabled him to achieve merit and success in his life. Robbie is a special person and gives much more than he receives. He is a very talented musician and has developed a great reputation in the industry for assisting professional musicians and collectors to acquire rare and custom instruments. In this episode, we focus on his musical, creative process and how he has used his recovery as a source of inspiration and encouragement. This discussion goes deep, and some of the content contains intense topics relating to physical and substance abuse and a difficult path to recovery. I think we both had a hard time keeping our emotions in check. This was a true moment of fellowship and brotherhood. I hope you enjoy. Hey, Robbie, how you doing today, buddy?
Hey, how's it going, Troy?
Very good, very good. I just want to thank you so much for doing this with me today.
Oh, man, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, you know, it's good to be back in Dallas again. It was great. We had a great opportunity last night for a dinner with you and your beautiful wife, Lisa.
Yes,
that was good
it was
times.
amazing.
Yeah, and then today I just wanted to thank you too. I just really appreciated the opportunity of going to your church, Fellowship Church here in Dallas.
What a great service, wasn't it?
Oh my God, yeah.
I couldn't have picked a better time for you to come.
No, that was
great.
Very powerful, and it just really is a message I needed. Thank you. What I wanted to do a little bit was, first of all, we'll start out. You and I, our connection, probably around December 2017. I was just doing a lot of work here in the Dallas area. I'd been flying back and forth for 2 or 3 years. And, in my profession, or at least in my career, I started a little bit of a routine that there was 2 things that I do when I'm on the road and big things happen in my life. I first of all, when I'm on the road, I like to go to music stores and check out locally, wherever I'm at, anywhere in the world, just to check out the guitars or anything there. The second thing is that when I have something significant happen in my life, I always buy something very nice just to commemorate it. That's my way of just kind of going a little bit mad money. And so that time came in Dallas, and had an opportunity. I met you at your office at the Dallas Platinum Room, and you and I kind of got together. We definitely had a love for 80s, 90s, heavy metal and rock, and guitars, just everything in general. But I think what I learned very quickly with you is, your knowledge and the background that you have within the Dallas music industry. And, and I think that started just a great relationship. And, and I think for people that are in business, and we all have friends that do different things, and we developed a friendship, and it was just something very interesting. So I know, we've been to concerts together. We went to the NAMM show. It's interesting. You go to the NAMM show with someone like you that's been in this music industry for quite a while. It was unbelievable, some of the people that you introduced me to. So I was just very thankful. And then probably the other thing that I would just kind of throw into the pot as we kind of, get your information out there is that the Dallas Guitar Show is one of the premiere shows. I always like to come here for that, and you always had a pretty significant hand in that, and especially developing the youth in the music industry. And you guys would do the big promotions and have these 12-year-old guitar wizards and wizardess people that were just doing unbelievable stuff. So Robbie, you've always been given back into the industry, and so anyway, that's my perspective, and maybe you could kind of pick up from there from our connection, and then eventually what I'd like you to do is to kind of go back a little bit and just kind of set the stage, introduce yourself to the audience.
Yeah, all that was great. Thank you for the major introduction that you just gave me. What am I supposed to say now, right?
Oh, you're awesome.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so we met. It was a really nice time. It was around Christmas time. You came in and got a guitar. We started talking about things. And what was really cool is I don't think we talked about guitars at first. We actually were talking about just life.
Yeah.
We're talking about each other's lives, where we're from, what we're doing, what our goals are. It was a really interesting conversation we were having. You know, I've always been a person that wants to help everyone. And so when someone wants to talk about it, there's always a relationship built there somehow. There's always building a rapport with somebody, but it even goes deeper. These people that have always been customers or clients, they end up becoming friends. And if you make them friends, then, you know, everybody's got a plumber, a mechanic, a painter. I mean, who's your painter? Well, you got a painter. The reason why he's your painter is because you trust him. You became friends with him. You trust he's going to do a job, right? I never wanted to be anything but the person. I want to be somebody's guy in this industry, whether it's whatever it is. So
yeah, and Robbie, your background. I mean, just to kind of go, you know, I'll just kind of, it hooked me into your personal story. You know, it was very powerful. You know, most people, you know, it's a pacing thing in a relationship, right? You kind of come out and you build, hey, this person, you know, this might be just a transaction we go through together. There might be more there, but I think, you know, fairly quickly we got pretty substantive. And I would say probably one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on the show is that the type of person you are and your testimony in life, very powerful. To talk a little bit about, you know, where you were born and raised, that it kind of led into that testimony, and it'll kind of set the tone for a little bit of more of the interview here.
Sure. I was born and raised in Fort Worth, Texas. It was a time where things were a lot more innocent than they are today in the world that we live in today, for sure. My mom and my dad were always fighting. I was introduced to church at a very young age. My grandmother would take me. My mom would take me. And the first time I went to church camp, I understood what was going on. I had my heart changed. I know I'd need my heart changed, but at that young of age, 10 years old, I got home the summer before my 11th birthday, and I tore up all the cigarettes, and I poured all the alcohol out because I'm trying to explain to my mom, I know why Dad beats us all the time. He needs Jesus. And so, fast forward, I slept in the bottom of a toy box with 2 broken arms, my wrists. My dad beat me so severely that he was just a very, very mean person, very hateful man. And my grandmother found out about it and just kind of came over and took me out of the house. There was no CPS. She just took me.
Yeah.
And
yeah, your grandmother just. And again, I think, you know, even fast forwarding to today, the amount of influence that this lady has had in your life is just incredible, and really someone to kind of, you know, as the song says, someone to look over you. Definitely she was a blessing in your life. Yeah.
And her and my grandpa both. My grandpa was one of the original Texas Playboys, so they were both steeped in tradition of this old school Americana style country western swing music. Mm-hmm. He moved to Texas away from his best friends, Waylon Jennings, Willie Nelson, and Merle Haggard, and Conway Twitty, all these people, to come to Texas to raise my mom. And so it's really funny as a young age when I'm living there and hanging out there, when they would come to the house as they were leaving to back the car out of the driveway to leave, they always would say to my grandpa, his name was Gene, they call him Gino, Gino, why are you not coming to Nashville? Your music's just as good as ours. You can make it, man. Mm-hmm. He says, man, I would love to, but I came here to raise my daughter, now I'm raising my grandson. I didn't understand that as a kid growing up. I thought, oh, you know, no big deal. As I got older, I'm going, he missed his shot. He missed his opportunity. But really, you know what's crazy? all of the people I just mentioned. He would sit me down later in life and say, I stayed here because I didn't want to destroy our family.
Yeah.
Those other people sacrificed their families for the fame.
Yeah.
It really hurt my heart to hear this, but that's just the truth.
Yeah. No, and that's the thing is, a lot of people that have very tough childhood. I mean, somebody has to, I always kind of give an example is that, when you're in the middle of a lake and you're in a boat, a small boat, and there's two people in it, and somebody steps up and stands up and gets crazy, starts moving the boat all over. If both people stood up, the boat would just tip over. And so, sometimes it takes, even for your grandfather, sacrifice. I mean, he was there and, and just, gave it his all to your family. So I think that is awesome. Kind of a pivot into, as you were kind of going through this process, I was also kind of moved by how music became kind of a solace for you.
Oh, man, yes.
So just talk about that, because we're going to get deeper in this too.
Yeah, so whenever I was a little kid, and I started listening to skating rink music, and skating rink music to me was like in the late 70s.
I
and,
loved it.
Everybody loved it, 70s pop music, and I would have my first radio, and I would sit and listen to that as I'm sleeping. And I'd go to sleep, fall asleep, and then in the middle of the night, I'd wake up, maybe to go to the restroom, and your favorite song's playing. So what do? You call the DJ, and you go, can you play the such and such song? And they go, what are you doing up, little kid? Don't you have to go to school? And I'm like, yeah. Well, I just played that song. I go, I just got the last second. And so, of course, the DJ lied to every one of us and say, okay, just hang on, I'll play it in a second. And they would never play the song over, right? But it was a relief. It was definitely a relief. Music became like so joyful to me, considering what I was going through and the destruction I was coming out of. Mentally, I didn't have a preparation. The one thing I didn't understand about this was, even though I had a father who didn't know how to love me and a grandfather who tried to love me, I still needed more than that. I needed somebody to sit me down and talk to me that wasn't from my family and really focus me on the if you want to call it, the rules of engagement of life, which I didn't get until I got later, which you said you will talk about later here. So
yeah, and then you get into being a young man, and you get into the music industry. You're definitely a very talented musician, and you also started to get into actual working in the music industry. Talk about that, kind of taking us up to current today, because what I do want to get into a little bit, especially for closet musicians like myself and a lot of people that listen to this that would love to hear this. I'd like to get to like your perspective of maybe the current state of the music industry, but let's set the credential in place of what got you to where you're at today.
So one of my next door neighbors at my grandmother's house, older brother had a car and he's driving, and he said, I know somebody that plays guitar that's young like you, but it's not older like your grandpa. I'm like, oh, wow. I've never met anybody that plays guitar outside of my house, that's young. He goes, we're going to go see him, but we need gas money. And I'm like, well, I don't have any money, So he goes, well, we need $2 for gas. I mean, that's how much gas was back then. So I stole money out of my grandpa's little quarter piggy bank thing and gave it to them. And so we drove all the way. It wasn't close. It was from downtown Fort Worth almost, where we lived, to downtown Dallas almost, to this place. And introduced me to this guy. His name was Kim Davis. Well, Kim Davis was the lead guitar player for Stevie Ray Vaughan's band called Blackbird.
Right.
How good you got to be Stevie Ray Vaughan's lead guitar player. That's how great the guy was, right? So I met the guy. It was really interesting. Then I got a hardship license the following summer. So I went back to the music store and I asked the guy if they were hiring. And Kim Davis was very redneck, and he's really cool, but he was, hey, brother, you need a job, brother? And I'm like, yeah. So you got a social security number? He wrote my name and number down on a legal pad, right? I'm barely 16, right? 17. And he goes, can you be here, Monday? I said, sure. So I go there and start working there, right? 2 years into my tenure there, my birthday's in August, so I was barely almost 18. The HR guy called me into the office, and he's like, you lied on your application, we have to fire you. Oh. And the owner's like, hang on. Robbie, did you fill this application out? And I said, that's not my handwriting. Kim Davis hired me. And they all start laughing. They go, can you sit out there for a second? They page Kim Davis. Kim Davis comes over, hijacks the meeting. He's got barbecue sauce all over his beard, and he's like, hey, guys, got a barbecue sandwich over. He looked at me and goes, hey, there's Robbie. You need to give him a raise. He's the hardest working guy. It's the best thing ever happened to this company, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh, my God, I'm getting fired. This is awful, right? But anyway, I had to stay out there for an hour. First time I've really been in really, really bad trouble, I thought, right? The HR guy comes out and says, you know, Robbie, let's forget this ever happened. We're going to, based on Kim Davis's recommendation, we're going to give you a raise. They were trying to pay me off so I don't sue them because they didn't have everything implemented of how old you have to be to work there.
Wow.
And I never filled an application out. So, yeah.
Wow.
So isn't that funny?
Yeah, that is. And that started the
I was
working.
totally into this. I was sweeping the floor. I was mopping the floor. I was doing whatever I needed to do. I found out how to do point of sale. They were showing me all sorts of stuff. But I started, talk about ground level. I was in the warehouse doing the crappiest job, toilets, whatever I needed to do to have a job. But I wasn't waiting for anybody to give me money. I wanted to do something that my other, everybody in my family were doing. My grandparents, I learned from them because, remember, I lived with them, and they were a product of the Depression. I mean, they didn't have anything. They worked 3 or 4 jobs a day sometimes, their whole life, including play music and gospel music and such, and go to church and have a family. So I thought, this is the way I was taught and brought up. So I wasn't waiting for somebody to give me anything. I went for it.
So in this journey through your music industry, like up to current day, when I intercept you, you have a band that play in downtown Dallas. There's a couple really big name, high profile rock venues, Trees,
Bomb Factory.
Yeah, Bomb Factory, all of those. And so you're in there, and I come to town one time, and you're like, "Hey, Troy, I'm opening up for Cinderella," and I'm like, "What?" And then Striper, and I mean, you so. There was when you come, you get to see you, obviously, and see these people up close, meet them. And it's just, so definitely between that and then we go to the Dallas, the guitar show that every year, and, Paul Reed Smith's there, all these luminaries in the music industry, and they're all like, they come to you and like, "Hey, how's it going in Dallas?" And so kind of as a little bit of a setup, you're a musician heavily involved in the industry here in Dallas, and then you're kind of very involved in the music industry, specifically retail sales of things that kind of move. I also, Guitar Center is headquartered in California, and it definitely, a lot of stats are collected, and, there's been a lot of stuff going on in the music industry. So what I wanted to do a little bit was to talk about the state of the music industry from your perspective. We won't spend a lot of time here, but I think some people will find it interesting. One of the things that is kind of universal, whether you're in music, consulting, art, anything, comedy, it's how do you brand yourself? And, when you're dealing with some of the big instrument companies, you and I have had discussions. Are there more brands now? Are the brands consolidating? The state of the music industry. What do you see out there as technology really starts taking off? The manufacturing costs come way down. Quality, I would argue, as a hardcore musician person, I don't think has gotten as good. And then people are willing to pay the extra to have handmade instruments or stuff like that. What's your view on the brands?
So I think everybody in our industry, in the musical industry, retail that is, and manufacturing, are needing help in so many areas, especially because of what happened after the junk with COVID. It put us all into a place where we had to figure out in this crazy maze how to get through it, and where, who's driving the bus, where this is going, and it was hard for everyone. And I think not even just in our industry, but in all industries, this thing kind of shook everybody, But looking back, right before this happened, we were having some really great years. I mean, it's hard to say in my side of the industry that there were not really very many guitar heroes left since the passing of, the untimely passing of Eddie Van Halen. I mean, he changed everything for everyone, not because of just his playing or his style, but he gave a shot to music that every kid on the planet wanted to play like him, and there were schools opened up all over the country and some parts of the world to teach you how to play like this, right? It was a phenomenon, and it hasn't nothing been that way since. There's been a lot of good ones, a lot of great ones, but not something that was like that. As far as the branding goes for the brands, everybody's hurting, so everybody needs help. So if a company, say a big company from Nashville, that has a guitar company, and there's a guitar amp company that's in California, And some of these guys are getting older. They're thinking about their future. They don't want to work another 25 years. They're in their 60s, maybe 70s.
Mm-hmm.
They probably should get with somebody that's going to take the legacy onto another level. And some companies have since this happened. Case in point, Michael Soldano, good friend of mine who owns Soldano Amplification. You've heard his amps on many, many artists' songs and don't even realize it. He wanted to retire, and instead of selling to somebody extremely big like Fender or Gibson or someone else, he went to a little bit smaller place, and they bought him and kept him on as a consultant so he can keep his legacy. And his amps are still killing it. They're still selling like they've always sold. Maybe even better now because they're more consistent, because he can make them faster, because it was only him and a helper. That's how small the company was.
Yeah.
So there's
I
that.
noticed that even with Taylor, right? So
Taylor too. You know, all of the main so they're the big companies like Martin and Taylor, Fender, Gibson. None of them were suffering without, you know, all of them were suffering. Let's just say.
Yeah.
As far as getting them to a new place, they had to get through the maze to figure out how to brand what they are doing and get people back into the swing of things. And I think the biggest thing from the older companies is if they keep doing what they do and not try to reinvent the wheel, maybe new colors, but not try to change a 59 Les Paul or a 62 Strat, just use different colors. I would think they would be better off than putting, like, let's say, a guitar that tunes itself.
Right. Yeah.
That didn't do very well.
No, kind of in the music industry and kind of in group or instrument companies kind of putting stuff out. Some experience that you and I've had together is Eric Johnson. Like, it was interesting. Fender. And Robbie, don't be knocking my story here, because I know we're going to get into that. So that won't make me super popular with people, but it was interesting. So Eric Johnson, legendary guitarist,
Iconic.
Yeah, just
A-lister.
Unbelievable. He partners up with Fender. They do a design specifically for, what was it, the F-hole design?
There's a couple of different versions, but the one that you actually ended up buying was the F-hole Strat.
Yeah.
Very, very cool. Very unique.
Yeah, and then what I noticed too, and I didn't realize this, is that it's almost like writing a book. Once you write the book, you get everybody on board. You're kind of now a quote product. They publish it, and it's not over. Like Eric was on the road.
Beginning.
So you call me up and you're like, "Hey Troy, you're going to be in Dallas?" So I go down to the Dallas Guitar Show, and he's like, "Hey, Eric's new guitar came out, and I know you're a big fan, so if you've got this, and he's going to be at the show, so maybe he'll come down and sign it for you." And I was like, "Oh man, Robbie, this is unbelievable." So I go down, I buy the guitar, I end up getting it. You and I are on phone dial, speed dial. You're like, "Troy, Eric's coming, and he's going to meet you. So let's take care of this." So I go over there. I have the guitar. He was super gracious. What a neat guy. And he's talking to me, and first name, he called me Troy. "Hey, what's going on?" And I'm like, "Hey, Eric, if you wouldn't mind, please sign the pickguard, because, I just really appreciate it. I don't know if I'll play it or I'll put it in with all my other guitars that I have that it'll be a museum someday." And at least my wife hopes, so that it'll no longer be in the house, because she's, But
She's
so
not
anyway.
anti-guitar. She just thinks more than 10 is probably too much, right? Too many.
And I never want to put her on this, because she won't stop talking about that. But so Eric's not a problem training, and he signs it. He takes a Sharpie and he signs his name on the pickguard, and he looks up at me and he goes, "Is that it, Troy, right now?" And I'm like, "Yeah, thank you, Eric." He goes like, "Well, I got to go. I'm doing a documentary. They were going to go through an edit process." So he leaves, and I go back, and you've got a bunch of your guitar buddies there, and they're looking like, "Hey, Troy, let's see the guitar. Let's see where he signed it." And then I opened it up, and everybody started laughing at me. And I'm like, I go, "Robbie, what the heck is going on?" And one of your buddies goes, "You had him sign the plastic covering on the pickguard."
Which comes off all the time.
Yeah, it's like, they put that on to protect the pickguard. Like, what were you thinking? I'm like, "Robbie, I got to get him to sign this thing again." I mean, I took pictures of this for authenticity, and that picture, the signature's right there, and you were laughing. So you track him down. We end up going and finding him at where they were doing the documentary, and come out, and he goes, "What are you doing here again?" I said, I'm really sorry. Like, I need
He's
you
got
to
a
sign
sense.
this
He's got a
thing."
great sense of humor, though. Come on, he was just he's trying to plug you a little bit. He's trying to give you a finger to the side there a little bit.
He was joking with me, and,
Yeah.
and then he looks at me. He goes, Troy, I was wondering why you had me sign the plastic. I'm like, Eric, why didn't you say something? He goes, well, what do you want me to do? I said, well, I'm gonna lift the plastic up a little bit. Could you sign it exactly underneath? Because I'll just take the plastic up, and then I'll have the signature, and we'll just hopefully somebody won't be forensically looking at that picture to see it's a little off from the actual one. So he looks at me, he goes, okay, you sure you want me to do that? I'm like, sure. So I sign it, he does it again, and then I put the plastic over it and back, and I was like, oh man, Eric, that looks really good. So he hands the guitar back to me, and I put it back in the case, and he's like, okay, he goes, I'm gonna let you go. He goes, but Troy, one last question, because this time I can't walk away and leave you alone. He goes, you realize the guitar was already signed, right? I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, get the guitar out of the case, turn it over, and look at the back of the neck. And I'm like, oh my God. So the bottom line, Robbie, for my museum, I've got the only 3 signed guitar by Eric Johnson. Thank you.
I think I told everybody I'm going to have to tell them that I think everybody knows who you are now, because Eric put on Facebook that there's this weird guy that Robbie Gustin knows that got his guitar signed 3 times by me. So watch him.
Yeah.
He might be coming to your place next.
Yeah.
No, I'm joking.
No,
but that was a great time. I think that was a fun time anyway, because any of us that are artists that get stuck in the moment with a person that's in love with your craft, you want to take time for them.
That's
and
right.
so Eric was one of those guys that's always been approachable. He's always been a gentleman, always been a kind soul. Yeah. And so what he did for you was extra. I thought it was really funny, though.
Yeah, very, like you said, very humble person.
Very,
so
very
legendary. Hey, as I want to make a transition a bit here and talk about aligning your passion with your career. And so you are in a very interesting position where you're a musician. Music, big influence. You went all in on that, and you ended up in the music industry, and being able to do that. I think the one thing that has been kind of interesting is that with that, you also have a project going right now. Can you talk a little bit about your project that you got going here?
Supernova Remnant?
Yeah,
sure.
Absolutely.
So Supernova Remnant was birthed out of a broken, very, very broken situation I was dealing with and have dealt with since it started. In 2001, December 31st, 2001, I went to church for the first time since I was a little kid. Mm-hmm. I was high as a kite. I was really messed up, very depressed, very angry, very upset. Quit my job, walked away from music, walked away from everything. Didn't have any kind of spirituality, definitely didn't have Jesus in my life. Very angry. Looking back and reflecting on everything, what happened to me in my life and why I allowed it, like it was all my fault, Never dealt with it, really. I went to church. I didn't go to the altar or give my life to the Lord that night. And on the way home from that church moment, my wife at the time wouldn't look at me. She was crying really heavy, and she just said these words. I had visions and dreams that tonight was the night that you're going to get saved.
Wow.
Give your life to Christ. Your life is going to get turned around, and you're going to save millions of people with your music.
Wow.
And I'm so messed up.
You're
I'm
probably
so
trying to
messed
figure
up
out
and
what does
high.
that mean.
I'm like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
You're drinking the Kool-Aid. You're out of your mind. You need to shut up. I mean, I was so messed up. I didn't even know what to say. I wish I had that one back. I shouldn't have said that to her. But little did I know what was about to happen.
Wow.
So 17 days later, I had a drug overdose. I was in a coma. I had a stroke.
Wow.
Luckily for me, it didn't last years. The process of getting out of it lasted a while, obviously years. But the immediate thing was I was able to walk, a little bit and talk a little bit. My hand motion and my leg motion wasn't quite where it should have been. And I went back to that church, though, on the 21st of January. It's my born-on date, if you will. And I've never looked back. I went back to church. I went back to Jesus. Since I was a little kid, I've been running my whole life because I was so angry because of what my dad did to me. Angry at God, angry at my family, angry at my mom, angry at everybody around me. I was a very, very angry, angst little boy. And
Is that the time like for recovery then, or did you have to go through a process?
My process was it's always a process. It's like peeling an onion to get to zero. It's always what I always call it. You have to peel all the layers of junk off that you had to deal with your whole life that you never really dealt with, and get to the very center of why this started. Where did it start? It started when I was a little boy. I made a series of horrible decisions because of the situation that I never knew how to deal with it. I had to go to psychotherapy. I lost my family. I lost everything. I had to start my whole life over with nothing except a Bible. And
how does that make the segue then to the Supernova Remnant?
So Supernova Remnant, I was in a Bible study on Romans, and we got to Romans 11:5 that says we're all remnants chosen by grace.
Got it.
The message was about grace. What does grace mean to you? And all around the room in the church, they were talking about, these people would answer, and I'm still just like a fly on the wall, like a sponge, soaking all this up, kind of new in my belief system. So I'm like, this is amazing. I never heard this stuff before. This is so incredibly powerful. My mind is being changed every day. It's so awesome.
Yeah.
And so one of the things was, I went home, and I'm looking at my computer. I want to have a music project that's called Remnant or the Remnant or Remnant. So I'm looking, and all these bands look like they're suing each other for the name. And I'm like, well, what the heck? That's not good, right? Yeah. But my computer, the funniest part is my computer was so old. Someone gave me a computer at the church. It's so old, it didn't have pop-up blocker on it. So it's like I'm in the kitchen getting water because I walked away, and it's like bloop, bloop, bloop. Remember your computer that makes those noises?
Yep.
And it came back, and it's stuck on this one page. Remember, God's plan is better than all of our plans, right? It says, the Vela Supernova Remnant. I start reading this paragraph. It says, the Vela Supernova Remnant is a star that the Hubble telescope has found that's on fire 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So I shortened the name to Supernova Remnant. We're on fire 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And we're all remnants chosen by grace. Oh, I thought that was the coolest thing I ever seen.
Yeah.
And every day since then, if you see my journal, all my songs, everything that came about this, it's all about what I wrote down in my journals. My journals are always been my songs. It's always about hope. It's always about somebody helping me, helping you, helping them, helping all of us. So, yeah.
Well, I got to tell you, so Robbie, we, over the last 2 or 3 years, you've been going through the process to kind of get this album together. And something that I'd like to do that I haven't done on any of the episodes is that, there's one of the songs that you did release out on Apple Music and Spotify that's out there called "Stand Up," unbelievable, and I would encourage anybody that's listening to this, if you go and you listen to that song, you realize that there's 9 others that are coming right behind it, and I even got a preview yesterday, which I really always appreciate, Robbie.
Thank you, man. I appreciate
would you mind? Because what I'm going to do, I want to ask you. To do just a little bit of a setup, and then we'll let about 30 seconds of this song play just a little bit, just so people can get an idea of like the type of beautiful music and art that you create.
Thank you. So Stand Up also came out, in a hard place. The biggest thing is anytime I start writing stuff, I start writing from a perspective of what I've gone through, and sometimes it hits me. And sometimes it just flows. I can't write it down fast enough. It's just flowing out of me, and I have to get my voice recorder out and start recording what I'm thinking because it's so impactful. The Lord just moves in such a way I can't control all of it sometimes, most of the time. But Stand Up came up. The premise of the song is, I see you as a person, a man, and I see you're hurting. I see the scars on your heart, and I also see that inside of you, something that you don't see in yourself, just like you see in me. We all see this about everybody. There's something inside of you. Get past all of the exterior. What's going on in the heart, right? I've often thought about the pain inside your heart and all the scars inside of you, right? But also think about these things about myself, right? So let's get together and stand up and shout it out and make it loud.
This is Stand Up with Supernova Remnant. Hey, Robbie, that song, like I said, we talked about this at dinner, when I was doing, getting the podcast ready. A little bit probably more about the podcast is I loved Hawaii Five-0. I loved Eight Is Enough. I loved all of these TV shows where even if I didn't like the episode, I could not wait to hear the song that came out when it started.
Right.
And so being in LA, having a bunch of buddies that are in the music industry, I said, hey, I want an original song for my podcast. And they're like, well, Troy, what are you thinking? I said, well, it's got to be rocking because it's an 80s, 90s guy here, but it's got to be original. And, so I just want to make sure. And they're like, well, can you give us some ideas? And so I go, well, I'm going to tell you, this one song was Stand Up. I sent over to him. I said, this thing can't be used because he hasn't got the whole album done yet, and I don't want this to be the pre-release. But I said, that song, when after you just heard, it definitely is inspiring, and it's kind of one that you could kind of hear. But what a great song, Robbie. I mean, seriously. And I think, and what I'll do too is after we get ready to post this episode, I'll put up in the interview notes a link to the song so people can hear the whole thing.
Awesome.
And then we'll anytime you have any updates, we'd love to be able to promote that out there.
Oh man, thank you so much. I hope that everybody enjoys it, and if you do, please give us a like on all the social medias. Find us.
There you go. Yeah. Hey, closing. So as we're getting here towards the end, what I'd like to do is, definitely it's been a great journey today, talking from everything from, a very tough childhood, going through a process, using, like I said, music as solace and finding your peace there, being able to get to a point in your career where you're able to mesh these together. Recovery, all of that stuff. It's just an unbelievable story. But what I'd like to do is to give you an opportunity in closing to just leave something with the listeners from your perspective that you think might be helpful for these listeners. Remember, these are people that may be musicians, but a lot of them are political people. A lot of them are business people in different areas. And so, if you give a little bit of something that would be very helpful, that'd be great.
Sure. So recovery. If you're going through something in life and you need help, it really depends on how bad you really want to recover. I wanted it so bad, I would have died for it. I think that's why my recovery was real. My transformation was absolutely, without a doubt, real. I've been sober without one little problem ever in 21 years. Have not had an issue with drinking, alcohol, drugs, anything, right? Cigarettes, whatever. It really means the world to everybody if you get sober and if you get clean, because everybody wants to see the potential of what you have in your life to give to others. And I think if you get sober and you get healthy and you get well, you can lead others. You can help others. You can't do this from perspective of being an addict. You have to get right. You have to get clean. In order to do that, you have to want it more than anything. As far as the last thing I would say about any of the music, to me, music has always been an amazing journey. I mean, it's given me as much as it's taken from me. I mean, as a musician, you give all you got to it. Sometimes you don't see it. It's kind of like being a disciple. You plant seeds all day long. You may not ever see the harvest, but that's not what we're looking for is the harvest. We're trying to help people. I'm trying to help people. I want to see people healthy. I want to see people succeed. I want to see people at their best potential, their full potential. Whether it's through me and my talk, my walk, my music, through others. I think everybody sometimes forgets that people see them and see things in them that they don't see in themselves. I have to remind people how great they are all the time, just as people remind me every day how great I am. And I feel like I am the worst of every man and least of every man, and I'm nothing but a bucket of dirt without Jesus. But I tell you, it definitely gives somebody major props in your mind if somebody's always reminding you that they see something in you that you don't see in yourself.
Robbie, that's a very inspiring message, and I just want to say you're a very special person. I really appreciate this. I feel honored to be able to have you on the show, and thank you so much for doing this with me today.
Thank you, Troy.
Yeah, you take care, my brother.
You too, brother.
Thanks again for joining me today on the Ameritocracy Show. Be sure to follow me on social media and our website at troyedgar.com, where you can get more information and sign up for my weekly email. I hope you have a great week.